Hello.
Hey, stranger, how are you?
I'm fine.
This is Mr. Nevada, since nobody else seems to want to call in.
That's fine.
My wife has a request, believe it or not.
That's fine.
She got such a kick out of your wife's spring rolls that she said, what else can she put up?
Well, she can put up quite a bit. The thing is trying to get her to make another video. She's a bit shy when it comes to getting on the video.
Well, tell her that she has some followers.
Okay. All right. And I got the proof right here. I can play this video back to her and show her the proof.
Well, we enjoyed it. The wife hasn't tried it yet, but I think it's probably going to happen soon.
Mm-hmm.
And the only reason I called is I don't want you to sit there with dead air, but we need to get more people in here.
Well, like I've said before, as long as I've got one caller, people are going to watch this by the numbers later on. So if you take a look, there's hundreds of views on the playback videos on YouTube. So, any information that we if me and you just bounce ideas off our head for the next 3 months and come up with stuff that's usable for the viewers, well, then it's a worthwhile project, isn't it?
Well, yeah, I guess so. I got a funny story to tell you. Tuesday, I ordered my still from the guy in Denver. You know who I'm talking about.
I think
2 days later, it was delivered to me.
Okay.
Do you believe that?
I can.
So I assembled everything, and I ordered double everything. I ordered two rolls of copper and 2 deals of ration rings, but I'm going to approach it. I'm going to start out just with it as a pot still with nothing in it.
Okay.
And go from there, and then hit it with a copper the next run. And by the way, I'm kind of jazzed about your rum thing. How did that turn out for you?
Well, I don't drink a lot of rum, so as far as something to compare it to, in my own mind, I really have nothing to compare it to. So, to me, it tasted pretty good. It tasted better than plain old sugar shine. So it was a success in my opinion, even though I have nothing to compare it to. It tastes pretty good. My wife took a taste. She enjoyed it. So I consider it a success.
Okay, well, I was curious. Oh, there's one thing. If you have 151 proof, don't try to make frozen daiquiris out of it.
It's kind of hard to make something frozen out of antifreeze.
Yeah, I tried it one year. It was wintertime, and so we decided to take some of I used to call the 151 diesel fuel.
Right.
And I decided to make some 151 for a party. And we took it, and by the time we got there, we had slush.
Oh, we have a second viewer on there now.
Yay! Maybe he'll call in.
Yeah.
If he does, tell me bye-bye.
Yeah, well, he can call. I've got the... I'll boot you off whenever he decides to call. But as long as you're on the phone, we'll talk about stuff. So other viewer out there, if you're patched in by now, go ahead and give me a call whenever you feel froggy. The number is posted on the social stream of the chat room area. Should be on the right of the screen. Give me a call whenever you feel froggy, and I'm gonna talk with my buddy here. And yeah, I'm glad that you called, because the last video that me and you were talking on, the guy came up with a couple of pretty good observations about the stuff you were proposing.
Oh, really?
Yeah. Compared, why you might have a bad taste with the 10 gallons versus the 5 gallons, and your your on-off controller versus your dimmer switch type controller?
I'm all ears, Mike.
Well, I don't have that up here handy. If you go over to YouTube and look at last week's video
Okay.
that I have, you can read it. Basically, I can tell you basically what he said, but you should probably read it for yourself so I don't mistranslate anything. But I'll tell you the basics.
Okay.
The 5 gallons versus the 10 gallons, there might be extra sediment from doubling the recipe, and that might be settling to the bottom and maybe overheating. That might be causing the bad taste. So if you take a 10 gallon, if you double the recipe to 10 gallons but use the same amount of yeast for 5 gallons, that might do it. Might. I'm not saying it's going to work. I'm saying it's a place to start looking. And as for your heater control design, what he came up with, again, this is just his thoughts on it, and I thought it was very brilliant on his part, even though we can't confirm this yet, that the coil or the heater element that you have in your still, the on-off thermocoupler controller, the thing is going to heat up full bore when it's in the on position, and therefore it might start scorching stuff. So stuff might settle on the element, and it might start scorching stuff versus the dialed down. So when you're playing around with that, you might try to look for subtle taste notes in your finished product when you're comparing this later on.
Well, I've got to do 2 identical batches, one each way, to really prove the point. And if worse comes to worse, I do have a controller sitting out there with ramp soak capabilities to where I can control the heat up ramp rate to like maybe 5 degrees a minute or 10 degrees a minute or something like that. It's hell having all these toys. I'm glad I kept them all. But no, I was kind of jazzed about your rum thing. The only thing is, where in the heck did you find a big jug of molasses? All I can find is the little bitty Briar Rabbit jobs in our stores here.
I'm in the middle of an Amish area, and there are Amish markets here and there. So I'm pretty sure I got that big jar of molasses from the Amish store nearby.
Okay, that would explain it, because I went looking and I can find the little 8-ounce bottles, but man, that'd be a pain. That'd be a total pain to make it that way.
Well, if that's all you can come up with, what I would do is I would use primarily brown sugar to get most of your sugar quota, and then top it off with a bottle or 2 of the 8 ounces just to richen up the flavor. Okay.
And then when I go, we're going to take our vacation 4th of July weekend, and wife's relatives all live up by Lincoln City in Oregon, and maybe I can figure out where that Amish area is you're talking about. Well, I don't want to bore these people with all this exciting stuff, but since I got my new toy, man, I was jazzed. I pulled that sucker out of the box, and I looked at it, and I assembled it, and I'm going, yes! And I looked at the things that I wasn't thrilled about. The column was a little shorter than I expected it to be. I probably only get 2 rolls of copper in it. And there's, the ones he makes for his brand, he's got a plug on the top. Well, this one's got a stainless steel cap you can't take off. So I can't really take those little ceramics. I can't take them all the way to the top like he does in his videos. But, hey, it's something to play with. It's my new toy.
Right. You're going to have lots of experiments with that. Now, remember, I told you last week that if you want to increase the cooling surface area to get a higher proof, you can attach fins to the side of that cooling tower.
Well, it's already got the water thing up there towards the top.
Right, okay.
But they say don't get too crazy about putting water in because a little bit goes a long ways when you're trying to...
Yeah, there's a huge difference between the trying to cool your coil and the little bit of cooling that you need for the upwards tower, because you gotta cool it. You see, alcohol evaporates and condenses at one set of temperatures, and water evaporates and condenses at higher temperatures. So you gotta keep it just a little bit cool. But if you keep it too cool, then you're just dog chasing his own tail, so to speak.
Well, that was what I've kind of noticed. You could have a 185 or a 190 down in the boiler itself, and if you've got your reflux on balls to the wall, it's not going to put anything out.
Right.
I've already figured that part out. But, I figure my first 4 or 5 runs are just going to be as a pot still until I get to know the machine.
Now, if you want to make a modification on that later on, you got the water cooler on the top of the column. That is where I would not put it. What I would personally do, even if you have one fin on there, you might make this think about this modification for later on when you're out of ideas to play with. Put one fin on there with about at least 4 inches wide, and then on the end of the fin put a water jacket on just on the end.
That's in the realm of doable.
You understand the science that I'm proposing?
I've got heat sinks laying around that I'm not worried about it.
You understand the science behind this that I'm proposing?
Oh, hell yes.
Okay.
Same thing as on a motorcycle engine or an aircraft engine.
Well, yeah, but we're offsetting the cooling sleeve a little bit so that it's hard to explain. The heat's going to have to take some time to travel through that one fin, but it'll eventually will, so it should help. Even if you use the coldest water through that, you know how they were talking about, well, first you gotta channel the water through one end, and then you have to channel it through the other end. You can't do it backwards. Well, this setup, you could do it that way. You could run the coldest water through that, and you should be able to maintain a proper temperature on your column. Well,
it's food for thought. Like I say, the toy is new, and it's going to be a week. But okay, this week I figure I'll get distill some water for the first run or two, just to see what's going on and clean it still up.
Right.
And I figure, being it's a keg, I'll probably fill it about 2/3 full and pour about 2 gallons of white vinegar in there and let it just go to town. That you agree with that?
Well, I don't know about diluting the vinegar down, but how much water and vinegar are you going to put in there?
I'll probably put about 8 gallons total, 6 water, 2 vinegar.
I would, if you're going to put the water in there, I would put in equal parts.
Ouch. It might be cheaper just to go buy a package of citric acid.
Well,
which would do the same thing.
No, I mean cut the water down to 2 gallons and 2 gallons of vinegar, or maybe 3 and 3.
Okay. Well, see, that's the other thing I worry about. In some of the so-called research I did before I built the keg, they said you want to leave at least 4 or 5 inches of liquid product, above the top of the hot water heater elements, otherwise bad things can happen. And at $18 a pop, I don't want too many bad things to happen, you know?
Right. Well then, put in just enough water to satisfy the elements requirements, and then put in whatever vinegar you can get your hands on.
Yeah. I can see it now. I'll come dragging in gallon jugs of vinegar, and the bride will look at me and go, "What the hell?"
Actually, you know what? Scratch all that. The 1 gallon of vinegar is more than enough. I mean, I clean my stove with just a couple cups, so I'm just kind of worried about diluting the vinegar too much, that's all.
Well, I figure as long as it's got a little bit of acidity to it. That's why I was wondering about just going up to the brew house and buying some citric acid and putting a couple of tablespoons in there and filling it up and watching it go from there. If I got it stirred up, it should be fine.
Yeah.
All I'm trying to do is, get any chemicals, left over from the silver soldering out of the damn thing, and clean up the stainless. I don't know, what the hell chemicals they put in it, and it's better to start with something clean.
Okay. Yeah, I guess what the original ratio that you proposed will work fine. I mean, 2 gallons of vinegar, yeah, I guess that's more than enough, even if it is diluted.
Well, even if I went 50-50 or 60-40 on it, I still should have plenty of acidity. Now then, you're going to have 15 experts telling us we're both full of crap on this, but oh well. Like you said, you got to make the mistakes yourself in order to remember what not to do.
Right. It's a learning process. Jack Daniels isn't going to come down and teach us their secrets, obviously.
No, well, I'm not a Jack fan to begin with. I'd rather do Mr. Jim, even though they're now owned by a Japanese company.
They're not going to come down either and tell us their secrets. And neither is Captain Morgan.
No, and what is it? We used to make jokes about Sham Pipple and Mad Dog 2020 and all that. But that was one of the things I learned last year about how much of the bad stuff is in the Mad Dog 2020. It surprised the hell out of me. I put a gallon of wine, the cheapest wine I could get my hands on, and I ended up with about 200 milliliters of the nasty stuff.
From 1/5?
No, from 1 gallon.
Oh, 1 gallon. Yeah, well, if you've seen that demo video of mine where I show proper maintenance and cutting techniques, I considering I only had 1/5, I had a surprisingly high amount of bad alcohol in there. So, I mean, I was expecting just a couple teaspoons possibly, but I had at least a shot glass. And they wonder where hangovers come from. Yeah. Well, yeah, I don't know if they make the proper cuts. The Mad Dog wine and those stuff has a little bit of distilled alcohol in it, and I don't know if they actually make the proper cuts for that they put.
That's entirely. Oh, you mean it's fortified?
Yeah, fortified.
In other words, they throw a little rot gut in there to give them more kick to the.
Right. That's how it gets up
to the glass full.
That's how it gets up to 20%.
Well, I'm a lot of years away from that kind of stuff. back in the college days, we used to buy, I forget who the hell, I was Gallo, made something called Spinata. And one year on our wall in our apartment, we built a Christmas tree out of empty Spinata bottles. And we had to do it twice because the first time we got it damn near all the way up. We were about 2 from having the top of the Christmas tree done, and the damn cord broke, busted bottles all over the damn place, and we had to drink like hell to get that done by Christmas.
There's a noteworthy task to accomplish. We got to get all this stuff drank so we can have it, or else we're going to ruin Christmas.
Well, you were young once too, weren't you?
Oh yeah. I was young once.
Well, there were 3 of us, so I mean, we cooked with it, we did everything with it. You know, it was a cheap jug wine, but they had this green bottle, and we just hang them up with a cord, hanging them off the ceiling, and just worked our way up. Started on the bottom about 8 across, and next one 7 across, next one 6 across, 5, 4, 3, and when that one, we hung that one in the middle of the night where it just crashed. We all go running in here, man, here's glass all over the floor.
Okay. I'm not gonna cut you off right now, but I'm just gonna, this other viewer out here, I'm just gonna remind this other viewer out here, go ahead and interrupt us anytime you want.
By all means.
Yeah.
Tell you what, I'll go bye-bye, so we'll make it easy here. And good luck, and tell them to call in. Get on the phone.
You hear that, viewer? Give us a call.
Get on the phone. Talk to you later, Mike.
Okay.
Bye-bye.
Okay, so now I'm out here by myself. No, that was quick. Hello?
Hi.
Yeah.
This is Dwayne. How you doing, man?
How you doing?
Oh, I've been hanging in there. I've been sitting here listening to you talk to the other fellow there. Been getting a kick out of him. His noble efforts in making sure that they had Christmas that year. So I thought that was a pretty good thing. I noticed on your last webcast you had some questions or some concerns about the heat that was actually needed for the distilling process.
Right.
Using the gas and everything is, fairly cut and dried. But figuring out the electric that you need for it is very simple.
Okay.
Basically, a BTU is, all a BTU is, it's the amount of heat it takes to raise 1 pound of water 1 degree Fahrenheit.
Okay.
So,
kind of like calories. Calories. A calorie will raise a cubic centimeter of water 1 degree, or something to that effect. So yeah, I understand the principle behind the BTU, the British Thermal Unit.
Yeah. Well, if people just take that and just figure, water's, about 8.2 pounds to the gallon, and if they'll just use 8 pounds and make it simple, and figure everything up, and run the calculations, it will be very simple to calculate how much heat and everything it takes. If you've got a pound of water, it's going to take, well, let's just use an example. Let's say we're using 70 degree as the mash temperature, which that's, typical for a house. And if you're going to get it to where it's going to start, evaporating alcohol, you got to get it up to about 173 degrees. So you're going to have to raise it up 103 degrees. And if you figure 173 degrees at 8 pounds per gallon, that's 824 BTUs per gallon.
Okay.
Now, when you're using the electricity, and then naturally, and getting back to the, to the amount, if you've got 5 gallons, you're going to have to multiply the 824 times 5. But for the electricity is going to give you 3.4 BTUs per watt.
Okay.
So to make it simple, you can say that a 100-watt light bulb is going to give you about 341 BTUs an hour. Just a 100-watt light bulb. And some of these hot plates that I've heard y'all discussing on there, I just went in for giggles and looked it up. You have to look at the wattage of the hot plate, because I heard you say that you had one time, that wouldn't boil water.
Right.
Some of them are that way. But you can get some up there that are fairly sizable. And, it looks like a 1,000-watt hot plate is pretty common. And a 1,000-watt hot plate is going to produce, 3,413 BTUs an hour. And that's going to be enough, more than enough for, say a 2-gallon mash. That'll heat it up in a,
right.
In a real simple amount of time. So they can use those figures. And if you'll send me your email, I've done a little paper on this thing. I was trying to post this on the page in there, and it wouldn't let me for whatever reason, but I can email it to you, and then you can take and post it on your page or put it on video or whatever you want to do.
On which page? YouTube?
I tried to post it on the video chat where you done on this last week. And
on the Ustream.
I didn't put it on the Ustream. I was trying to put it on the YouTube page.
Oh, on the YouTube page.
It wouldn't let me post it for whatever reason.
Have you tried Facebook?
No, I didn't put it on your Facebook.
Okay.
I could put it there.
Send me a. If you want to keep it private, you can send me a private message on Facebook, or if you want to publicly post the information, you can, or both.
Either way, it don't matter. Because, like I said, I know, and I've heard this same question asked numerous times. How much heat do I need? And
right,
it's simple. The way the process that you've got there. I know there's an old method you've probably heard of. It's probably called the KISS method.
Keep it simple, stupid.
That's exactly right. Keep it simple, stupid. But with the propane like you've got, you're easily adjusting it just by turning the flame and everything down, and you've got more than you need right there for
near pinpoint accuracy.
And the one that you was talking about with the other gentleman there a few minutes ago, he's got the thermocouple control and the rectifier control. The rectifier to me, in my experience, would probably end up being the best way to control the heat. And I don't know, he may have settings or controls, different from what's standard, by the years of experience he's had in the industry, and he's accumulated a lot of stuff over the years. But typically, your standard thermostats and stuff are going to have, at least a 5 to 10 degree temperature swing. So if you set it to cut up at 180 degrees and cut it off, it may drop down to 170 degrees before it kicks back in. Well, when it drops down to 170 degrees, you've done stopped vaporizing the alcohol. So you're going to have a constant stop and start process. Unless they've got something that they can actually control that differential and keep it much closer together, it's going to slow the process down, because you're going to be constantly stopping and starting, stopping and starting. And with the rectifier, you can turn down the amount of amperage going through it, which is going to reduce the amount of heat, which will give you the same effect of your being able to take the gas knob on your range and turn the flame down. It's going to give them the same effect, as long as it's not grossly oversized.
Right. Pretty much my thoughts on it, too. Go ahead.
Yeah. He sounds like he's got his act together on that. I heard he just unboxed his new toy. He sounds like a kid in a candy store right now.
Yep. He seems pretty knowledgeable, and he seems to be drawing on his own expertise very well.
Right. I was listening to y'all's conversation about I refer to them as a stripper pole, the reflux columns and everything else.
Okay, right.
Because it's just, in my opinion, and I mean, you've been around this long enough to know, it just seems to me one of the most fascinating things about the moonshine was the moonshine experience. And, those reflux columns and everything are notorious for, just making a grain-neutral spirit. It's basically, to me, they're made for making ethanol for cars.
Yeah.
They're not really made for drinking unless you want to make a...
Your stripper pole analogy is pretty accurate, because he was also talking about how he thinks the column strips away flavor. So the stripper pole is a pretty good, accurate description, and I think I'll probably use that description a lot in the future if I ever talk about this. If I ever make any...
That's what I like to refer to it as, because it's just, most of your new distilleries and stuff now, I've posted on several of your things on there. I live about 3 miles from Junior Johnson's distillery over at Piedmont Distillery.
Oh, okay.
And, they're using reflux columns and stuff like that. It's not the old, pot steel. And it's not running through a thumper and things of that nature.
It's nowhere near what Popcorn Sutton was using. Go ahead, continue.
Mike, you there?
Yeah.
I just lost you for a second. I don't know what happened. It just cut off.
Oh.
But, they're, to me, if you're going to make ethanol, you can't beat the things.
Right.
But I mean, if you're going for a real authentic moonshine taste and experience, to me, it just strips everything and just strips all that out of it. And
that's why I try to get everything. That's why I personally try to get everything done in a single distillation to keep as much flavor in there as possible. And that's why you don't see me in a hurry to upgrade that little coil that I have, because it's working for me just fine. Like, why is that all you need? Why don't you have this, and this? Because I'm already over 100 proof, and I'm watering it back down to 100 proof. So why do I need 160 when I'm just going to bring it back down?
One of the advantages of it is, the more you distill it, the cleaner the product's going to be, and it's going to be more refined. And that's one of the reasons that they did double distilling years ago, and that's one of the reasons that they come up, and invented the thump keg, is because it gives them not only a higher proof of alcohol, but it distills at one additional time. And it just clarifies the product and makes it, just crystal clear, and takes a lot of the bad taste out of it. The thump keg's good about, catching, fusel oils and stuff in it and other things that you don't want in a finished product that would get by there and go straight on through, without the keg being there. Mm-hmm. And like you were saying, you're getting 130 proof out of what you're using right there. It's simple. You're making a good product. You're happy and satisfied with it. Like the old saying goes, if it's not broke, don't fix it. Right.
If it ain't broke, don't fix it. I mean, you might be able to tweak it, but...
Sure.
Yeah.
One of the things that, and I agree with what that other gentleman's saying. They're doing a lot out there right now, just trying to take advantage of, quote unquote, the moonshine craze.
Right.
And everybody's just trying to sell, this, that, and the other. And you could take, a standard piece of copper tubing or copper pipe and put some, just some regular old copper scrub pads, real copper scrub pads, not copper plated, but real copper scrub pads, and stuff up in that pipe and make a daggone refractory column without having to spend hundreds and thousands of dollars doing it.
Mm-hmm.
you know, I was listening to you talk about last week as far as, you know, putting fins and stuff on the outside of it, of the column to help extract more heat out of it, which that would work. But one of the things that they're doing, you know, I've done heating and air conditioning for many years, and I've worked on many steam boilers. You know, and that's basically the same essence as what you're working on right here.
Right.
You know, while you would extract heat out of the side of that, there's nothing inside that's going to slow down that volume of steam that's going up that pipe. And the more heat that's built up in there, and the more that alcohol vapor becomes superheated, the faster it's going to move. And that's one of the reasons they're putting the plates and the ricin rings and all this other stuff in there, is to help slow down that flow of steam that's moving up through the column. You know, while they're saying I agree with you, it is basically in essence single distilling, but when you've got all the plates and stuff that's moving up there, the vapor is hitting it, those plates are at a cooler temperature, you know, than what water boils at, and that water will condense on those plates and on those rings and stuff like that and drip back down into the pot. That's how they're getting, you know, 180, 190 proof right. out of these things being distilled all at the same time. But it's just just slowing, you know, the process down, so that it's just redistilled more, even though it is on a single distilling. And that's how they're achieving those higher alcohol volumes.
Right. No, all I'm saying, when I was talking about the cooling fins and the air blowers and stuff like that, I'm just talking about how you can achieve the same effect on the outside of the column that they're trying to achieve on the inside of the column. And I think sometimes they tend to overthink this stuff, like putting the marbles and stuff in there. I don't think those marbles, while it does increase the surface area for the steam to condense on, they're not directly in contact with anything that they're going to be cooling off from. There's nothing to really heat sink those marbles, except direct contact with other marbles, and the surface area contact to contact with each marble is so minimum that I really don't see the point of putting marbles in there. But the rings, yeah, I can see more happening with the rings. But I was just thinking in the back of my brain that how you can achieve the exact same thing by putting fins on there, and where you can just increase, not necessarily that you want to do this, but if you're going to be playing with this stuff, yes, this is a technique to look at and investigate and see if it's a worthwhile project in your own personal distilling. Right.
Well, maybe those jokers have lost their marbles and just didn't have no other place to put them. You know, I think it's more about just slowing the flow down than it is pretty much anything else. You know, I know in refrigeration they've, you know, got to the point now to where they will actually rifle the copper tubing, which causes the refrigerant to swirl as it's going through the system, which is supposed to increase, you know, surface contact.
I can understand. I can see that happening in my head. I already understand the principle behind what you're telling me. Yeah, and I do believe, without being a refrigerant expert, I can see how that works.
Oh yeah, and it's, you know, I think that's and when you're looking at a 2 or a 3 inch column, that would be really hard to do because you're actually not getting into a high enough pressure that would actually make that work.
Right.
Anything that's working at this lower pressure, surface contact is what's going to make the difference. Contacting the outside of the column, yes, naturally that's going to work. But getting everything that's going up through the center, to get to the point to where it gets to that outside area to get surface contact, I think that would be just, kind of like a funnel effect. Everything that's on the outside is going to make contact, but what's scooting up through the middle is going to slide away. And I think that's why they're putting those things in there. It's just more of a restrictor to slow that steam and everything down going through there.
Possibly.
So it's
but remember, they also want you to buy.
Trying to figure out all these things and putting a little bit of science to work on it.
Right. Yeah, the science of this. That's what I'm trying to get figured out for all you guys. And I was about to say that, but also remember these guys that are selling these fancy reflux column stills. They also want you to buy turbo yeast and all the other extra crap that you don't need.
Oh man, yeah, I believe turbo yeast has a place. It's good. I think it's a good place in maybe ethanol, but it's not in a good drink because it definitely puts a taste to it, and that's one of the things that people have to understand. Over your, I remember on your first webcast when you had that young guy call in. I believe it's from either in Indiana or Illinois.
Well, he was actually, I think he was in California.
But he was having, troubles with everything. And
right, the first thing I told him, stop using turbo yeast.
Yeah, he probably put a whole bag in there, which, is definitely going to be like, I don't know, maybe dumping a pack of dehydrated dirty socks in there or something like that. I don't know.
There's a video out there on YouTube that I seen. I don't remember the name on it or the channel, but it's out there. If you give a general look for yeast, you might find it. They take and they compare 4 different yeasts, one of them being bread yeast, one of them being a champagne yeast, I think, another one being turbo yeast, and I forget exactly what the 4th one is, but after all was said and done, the bread yeast was almost just as good as any of the other yeasts, and the turbo yeast gave everything an off flavor and smell.
Right.
And they used the exact same wash. I mean, they made one big batch of molasses wash, and so that was a control.
Right.
And they had 4 different containers, and they tried 4 different yeasts, and the turbo yeast was the clear loser out of everything. The champagne yeast wasn't bad, but they thought it kind of stripped away the flavor. And after all was said and done, the bread yeast wasn't that far off from any of the other stuff that they were using as far as quantity and quality. So, bread yeast is just about as good as you're going to get. Well, there's better stuff out there, yeah, sure, but for the KISS method, bread yeast is as good as anything.
Right. One of the things that I've noticed, and there's research to back it up, is the increase of methanol when producing washes in excess of 12 to 13%. So that's one of the things that would be advantageous. If using the bread yeast, you're getting up just about to the maximum percentage. And then it loosens or reduces the chance of producing, methanol, which is going to end up being a product you're going to end up throwing away anyway.
Right.
So I think I think there's, with the turbo yeast especially, and I've read several things about, the real high increase of methanol production in the washes using the turbo yeast.
Now,
anytime that you're using, grain washes aren't too bad, but when you're using, making washes out of fruit or fruit juice, that's where, if they're high in pectins, that's one of the things that's going to help really increase the level of methanol that's produced as well.
Mm-hmm.
That may be why some of your Wild Irish Rose and things like that are so high in methanols and stuff that you got to throw away out of it.
Could be. Yeah, I don't know the process, the exact process of Mad Dog, but yeah, it's a distinct possibility. So now there was one guy who left me a comment or two months ago. He said that he likes his turbo yeast because he can get a full gallon out of a 5-gallon wash, and he puts extra sugar in there. And I was impressed that he gets a whole gallon, because I get roughly a half gallon. But then a personal friend of mine who we kind of got into moonshining at the same time, unbeknownst to each other that we were doing this, and then he looks at me up and goes, "Hey, wow, you got videos on this stuff? Wow, I was just doing this myself, just for kicks and giggles." And it's amazing how we came up with the idea at the same time, but never talked to each other about it. And he was, I think, he was using, he had some packets of turbo yeast, and he said that he noticed that he was getting higher quantities of the methanol and acetone. Like he would get like a full solid cup of the bad alcohol from using the turbo. He didn't say anything about as far as an off taste or anything, but stuff to consider. It's stuff to consider.
Well, and the way this guy makes his cuts, maybe, he may be saving stuff that, tastes like lacquer thinner, and still mixing in with his other stuff to come up with this gallon that he's supposedly getting out of his wash. Yourself, adding extra sugar is not going to do a thing. The yeast is only going to do, a certain amount. And
right.
in theory, a 20% alcohol by volume in 5 gallons, in theory, it's about a gallon of, of alcohol. But is that going to be a gallon of total alcohol or a gallon of drinkable alcohol?
Right.
Chances of it being a gallon of drinkable alcohol is pretty slim.
Well, I don't know until I try this myself, and personally, I'm not gonna waste go to the waste of making a sugar yeast or a sugar wash with turbo. Well, maybe sometime in the future when I run out of other stuff to talk about it, I might break down and actually try that and use the applied science and figure out what can be done with turbo yeast.
Well, I think I still stick to my guns and say it's good for making stuff to burn in the cars. I don't think it's something that's good to make a quality drink.
Yeah, it's definitely good for making lighter fluid.
Mm-hmm. Damn good at that. But I'm telling you what, it's not just one person that's saying that. If you look and read, it's a general consensus. You know, the turbo yeast is just yucky. And, you know, whatever you put in it, whatever you put in your wash, you know, the old saying is what you put in is what you get out. You know, if you put trash in, you're going to get trash out. You know, it's the same principle. That's, you know, why.
But I have made a silk purse from a sow's ear.
Do what now?
I said, not in the literal sense, but I have made a silk purse from a sow's ear. Not in the literal sense.
I hear you. You know, that's, you know, we was talking about water the other day, and something that I got to thinking about, and I believe it was your gentleman that was out in Nevada, or wherever he was, it was on just a few minutes ago, said when he was growing up, they used to have a real problem where they lived with a place that had a bunch of iron in the water, or that may have been you.
No, the place where I lived, I don't know what was wrong with the water, but they put so much chlorine in it that you could make grape Kool-Aid and the Kool-Aid turned brown.
Yeah, I remember that, but I remember him saying that they had iron in the water, and if, you know, he said if he was lucky, if you got 3 years out of a water.
Oh yeah, right.
You know, that's one of the things that, you know, in the area I'm at, there's some places that have high iron content in the water, and they can't even use copper tubing in houses for plumbing because within 2 years it'll eat completely through the copper tubing.
Right.
You know, which, you know, would make you believe that if that kind of water is used in these copper steels, you know, it's going to destroy the copper in these things. And stainless steel would be the same way. If it's got iron, it would actually cause that stainless steel to rust.
Right. Well, there are places in Michigan where I used to live that they actually, you know, like oil wells, they have brine wells, and some of the brine content in the wells are so high that the even a stainless steel sink could rust. The salt content is so high.
Jeez. I remember years ago we went to Florida on a trip, and we come back and stopped in Georgia, and I was thirsty and wanted to get a drink of water, and I went and turned the water fountain on, and I would literally die of thirst before I would drink that water. I mean, because I could actually smell the water before I got anywhere near it. There's a bunch of that sulfur water.
Yeah.
And that's about the nastiest smelling stuff. I could only imagine those guys down there trying to make shine out of something like that. That'd be a joke.
Right. Yeah, water is a key ingredient. You got to have good water. I got lucky. I've got pretty good water coming right out of my tap.
I'd be curious about something.
What's that?
There's an old saying that if your water won't beat, it won't make alcohol.
If your water won't beat, it won't make good alcohol.
Right. Put some in a glass jar with a cap on it, shake it, and see if it'll beat up.
That's an interesting experiment to try later on.
Yeah.
I might try to get some various water samples and see see if there's an easy way to tell if your water is usable or not. Good idea.
Yeah, I know the chlorine and stuff will kill the yeast, especially if it's in higher concentrations, and the fluoride and everything else.
Well, there's 100 people. Well, there's 100 lots where I'm at. So 100, well, near 100. So there's 100 people drinking off the same well, and the well is chlorinated. The manager of the place has licenses and stuff for water treatment, and I know that the water is chlorinated, and sometimes you smell it more than other days, but obviously it seems to be at a level that is acceptable for yeast. And you know, maybe if I tried some distilled water in the future, who knows, I might get more alcohol in the future.
You might. You very well might. I know I used to live in a place like that. We had like 300 lots in this complex, and they had a well that served everybody, and they had like a 10,000-gallon water storage tank there, so it held a tremendous reserve of water. And I know the chlorinator on that thing, something freaked out with it one day, and it got stuck. And I went to the kitchen to get a glass of water and turned it on. It smelled like it's pure Clorox coming out of the sink. And, after about 3 weeks, it finally got back down to normal levels. But, I mean, it was rather unpleasant there for a while. I mean, hell, you couldn't even take a shower in it. It was ridiculous.
Right. Go into the shower as a brunette and come out a blonde.
You got that right. Everything blonde. I mean, it didn't make no difference. You sterilized, you didn't have to worry about having germs and stuff on you. But,
right.
It would just burn. Just the water vapor in the room would burn your eyes. I mean, it literally would burn your eyes. And I was like, no, we ain't mess around with this. We had to go to other places and take showers for several weeks. But, I think you got a good thing going on here. I hope people start chiming in on it and getting a little more active on it.
Well, you have to be patient with these things. I started YouTube in 2009, and I guess you could call me a latecomer, because there's so many people out there. Since I don't know when YouTube actually officially started, but there's got to be millions of people that have had a head start on me, but yet being a latecomer on the scene, I'm doing pretty good. And I had to start with my first video, and I got that posted, and the next day I'm anxiously waiting for viewers on it. It slowly trickled in, and so I expect the same thing with this format to happen. As it gains popularity, the people will start trickling in. I don't personally mind that there's only 1 or 2 viewers a night, as long as I got somebody to talk to. Now, like, if there was 100 people watching and they all wanted to call in at once, I'd probably be able to get just a little information out on each question. And whereas me and you, we've been chewing the fat for almost a good half hour now, and the topic is thoroughly discussed, and people will see it at a later date, and they'll get a crap load of information. So there's nothing wrong with having just 2 viewers on here tonight. As long as I got somebody to talk to, then it's a worthwhile project.
Well, and the thing of it is we're looking at issues and questions that that everybody has, and it kind of goes back to the old saying of 2 heads are better than one.
Right.
As long as you're getting some good positive input on a problem and different ideas, that's just like the thing with the 5-gallon batch versus the 10-gallon batch. I mean, in theory, the only thing that's different is the amount of sediment and everything that you would have.
Right.
And if that element is close to the bottom, I don't know if you've ever watched an element work or anything, but when an element sets in a sediment and starts heating, it will start swirling the water and everything just right in that general area around that element or whatever fluid it's heating.
Right.
It will start swirling, and it'll stir that sediment up. So when an element comes back down, naturally the sediment should level out and go back to, a level place. And if it's going, back in on top of that element, each time that element's heating up, it's heating that sediment up again, and it could have, a burning or a scorching issue in there.
Yeah.
I mean, it's anybody that's had problems with a water heater, like that guy was talking about, that's had limestone. I mean, the limestone just gets in there around the top element, never burns out. It's always the bottom one. And it's because that limestone gets in there and settles around that element. It can't it's trying to heat the sediment up and not the water, and it ends up burning a hole through the thing because it just gets too hot.
Right.
And it just eats everything up. So it would just it doesn't make sense to why you'd run a 5-gallon batch and it would be perfect, and then, the 10-gallon batch, it's virtually the same. The only thing that would change would be the sediment level. That's the only thing I could think of,
right.
Unless something was, like you said, as far as the heating or whatever, just went absolutely nuts on it during the process for whatever reason.
But now, as you're talking about how the water swirls around the element, that is very true. As you're heating the water itself is going to swirl, but yet when I run my own batch, the whole bottom of the soup pot is hot. It is in a sense the heating element, because it is the part that is getting hot, that is heating the wash up. And so in theory, the wash is going to be stirred constantly, because there's very little time from the time that I pour the wash into the pot to the time that the burner is turned on. I mean, we're talking minutes here. Not enough time for anything to truly have a chance to settle, as you would like letting a homemade wine set for a couple of weeks. But yet the brief instant, the wash is sitting there for the longest period of time during the couple of hours that I'm running the mash, and then when it's done, the flame is off, and then within minutes the wash is dumped down the drain, and I do have sediment on the bottom. So
right.
even though we have a swirling process that is actually happening around the element, there's also sediment problems.
Right. Well, you're not coming in direct contact. Well, you are coming in direct contact with your heat source, but it's such a large area, and once it starts heating up, I mean, it just starts the churning all over the bottom of the pot.
Right. But I'm not noticing now. There should be a higher level of heat right where the burner is, but yet I don't see any patterns that are indicating that there is less sediment around that specific area where there should be more heat and more swirling.
Right.
I'm just throwing it out there so we get all the information down, so we can brainstorm this. Not saying that you're wrong or I'm wrong or who's right or who's wrong or anything. I'm just throwing out all the information that I have.
Sure. Well, it's like you said, it's not a matter of jumping up on the stump and thumping your chest and saying I'm right and you're wrong.
Right.
It's if you encounter a problem, find a solution to the problem, and that way everybody learns from it. That's just like a lot. I noticed that a lot of people, and I've watched every video you've got.
Oh, thank you.
Some of them multiple times, and one of the things I've watched is when you're straining everything, you actually strain everything that's in the fermenter.
Yep.
And a lot of people that when it comes time to put the mash into the pot, they will not get the sediment off the bottom. They don't even strain it. They leave it. They siphon off from the top of it, and they make sure that they do not disturb that and draw it into the pot when they're brewing it.
But I still get, even after all that, I still get sediment.
Right. And like I said, that's one of the reasons why, that's one of the reasons why I feel that they don't do it, is because they don't want that. Now, that's a lot different story, too. They're doing 50-gallon batches and you're doing 5-gallon batches.
Right.
So, you know, you lose a lot of alcohol there if you just leave 2 inches down the bottom and don't don't pull it out and strain it. Where to them, it may be 4 or 5 gallons, out of the wash, but what's it gonna, it's gonna be a bigger difference to you than it will be to them. So, but that's one of the things, that I was looking at and was noticing this, that you did filter everything and run the entire contents versus, the others I've seen just siphon off the top and then just leave the remainder there and discard it, or leave it in there and make a sour mash run.
Right. Well, the first banana brandy video that I did, I thought that possibly I could take a shortcut and just throw everything into the pot, solids and all, and all it did was all I had was coil puking on there, and so I won't do it. I won't put solids in my still pot anymore. I just won't do it. I learned my lesson the first time.
Right. Well, that becomes, I thought it was kind of amazing. About 30 minutes after you done the remake on that, you went in there and it done formed a nice cap on it. And you took your spoon and hit down on it, and it just like a foam volcano erupted out of it.
Right.
And I'm sure it was probably doing that inside the pot because those solids weren't broken down completely.
Right.
And it just made a big foam wash in there. It's like you poured about half a gallon of Mr. Bubble or something in there. It was going all up through the coil and everything else. So it's trial and error.
Oh, I have a third viewer out there.
Nice.
Okay. Well, we can keep talking until this third viewer decides to call. New viewer, if you care to call me and pose your question, comment, or idea or whatever, there's a phone number posted on the chat room side of the web that you're on. It's click on social stream. I do believe you need to do it, and the phone number should be up there. I'll put it up there one more time myself. Okay, if I just posted the phone number again. Anytime you want to call, me and this gentleman, we've pretty much talked our subjects to death, and now we're just kind of chewing the fat. And if you want to just go ahead and call in anytime you're ready and post your question. So where were we? Still there?
Yeah, I'm here.
Okay.
We was talking about the banana puke.
Right. Yeah. No, I caught a lot of flack on that first banana video, but from what I had seen, from any information that I could gather, I did everything from expertise that I had in the past on other videos, and obviously I learned real quick that it wasn't enough, so I just assumed that everything was going to work just hunky-dory, but it didn't. But I won't take that video down because I want people to see just how many mistakes that you can make thinking that you're just going to ease right through this stuff.
Right. Well, you know the old saying about assumption. And,
you make an ass out of you and me.
Yeah. I've got another one I'll tell you off the air later. But, that's one of the things that I was thinking about when I was watching that. And it seems, and correct me if I'm wrong, but it seems like the riper the fruit is, the more sugar content it has, and the easier it may be to possibly break it down. Just like you've seen with the bananas, the really ripe bananas were a lot easier to work with. They were softer and broke down a lot easier and a lot better. You would tend to think the same thing of with like strawberries. Strawberries gets, the riper they get, the softer they get, so they would be easier to work with, and they seem to be, a little sweeter once they get good and ripe versus just, when they've got that firmness to them, they just have a tartness to them.
Right. Yeah, there might be some truth to that.
Yeah. Apples and stuff seem to be the same way. The riper they get, the sweeter they get. And I had something curious the other day that struck me. We've talked about the grain mashes, namely corn, and doing the corn mashes. But you're typically using just a standard, like, field corn. And I was curious because they've got some of these really sugar-enhanced corns now that are hybrids that supposedly have 2 to 3 times the sugar content of, regular corn.
Oh, yeah.
It'd be curious just to be able to make a wash of that up and just see how much difference the sugar content actually is.
Yeah, that would be interesting. I've heard of a hybrid called super sweet corn.
Oh, there's dozens and dozens and dozens of them.
Yeah, I'm sure there is.
One that I used to plant was called Argent. And, it was literally so sweet, you could just pull it right off the stalk and eat it. You didn't even have to cook it. It was that sweet. And, it was really good. Expensive, but it was good. But there's dozens of hybrid, what they call super sweets. Most of them are the white variety, but they do have some, I think they may have some yellow corn that's that way. I know they've got some bicolored corn, both, the yellow and white combination that has it, but that would be, I'd be curious to see how much of a difference that would make. Of course, that would probably mess your ratios up of, about a pound of sugar to 5 pounds of corn. It may end up going down to a pound of sugar to 2 pounds of corn. Who knows?
Yeah, you're right. That's a very good point. A different type of corn might throw your ratios off. But
if it's got that much higher sugar content, it naturally would have to.
Well, what we're talking about though is there's only so much room in a kernel of corn, so I'm thinking there would be a ratio inside that kernel of corn compared sugar to starch. So there might also be less starch in that same kernel of corn, but there's already sugar that's already been converted. So there's got to be a give and take here somewhere. So I'm not necessarily certain that the ratios would be totally thrown off, but yeah, there's got to be minute changes at the bare minimum.
Well, the reason I tend to think so. But like I said, until you pull it out and try it, you just don't never know.
that would have to be a thing where I actually have to sit down and make a corn mash out of field corn and make another corn mash out of a hybrid like super sweet or something, and see if there's a comparable difference. That's you've given me that's the third idea you've given me for a video so far while we've been talking. So
yeah, before we're finished on here, well, you gonna be a Hollywood movie star.
I could only hope.
Do you think they could stand it?
I don't know. There's a couple of them haters out there that probably they probably couldn't lose a lot of sleep at night.
Yeah, speaking of that, that's your, it sounds like some of your HHO trolls you got following you around.
Yeah, I don't know if they're HHO trolls, but there was a couple of guys out there that you saw that wood chip warning video. These guys, the one guy was giving me information. It was totally off from the get-go, and the other guy's concerns were valid, but he was still a chest pounder. That the first guy, he was just talking out of his ass from the start, and they have some vendetta on the back of their skulls after you deal with them.
Well, it's just ridiculous they get on their neck like that. Now the glass exploding issue, that's a legitimate issue. But like I said, and I posted on there, my family's been canning for decades, and I've watched my mother and my grandmother can everything from vegetables to meat. And even the most stressful canning is when you're canning meat. I mean, because you're actually cooking the meat in the jar. You're at temperatures way above boiling temperatures. The pressure cooker's running under 15 pounds of pressure. And the tens of thousands of jars I've watched him can, I think there may have been 2 or maybe 3 jar failures out of all of that.
You mean explosions?
Yeah, where the jar's busted. Right.
Okay.
And to my knowledge, and I happened to ask them all about this the other day, they were actually, I think they were actually reused mayonnaise jars that they had used. But I haven't heard of one of the mason type or Kerr or ball type jars, busting under those conditions.